I should have Facebook up. All right. Yes, we are live. So, Mackenzie, thanks for joining. I'm going to get into your story here, and I think for all those listening on this Thursday Q&A session, they want to know a little bit about you, a name that maybe isn't as recognizable as some, but love the story and love where you got to and everything else. And for those who didn't have a chance to get into the description, Mackenzie started a company called Allegiance Hockey. And Allegiance Hockey is a mentorship skills program, right, with a lot of different components. And I'm just going to read the bio here, and this will be a good place, I think, for us to start. It says, Mackenze Stewart is a former professional hockey player, drafted by the Vancouver Canucks in 2014 and signed 1 year later. Mackenzie comes from a humbling beginning. Born deaf, Mackenzie wasn't able to step into skates until the age of 12, where he played the lowest level of community hockey his first season. Working on his craft, Mackenzie dedicated himself to making up for lost time. He learned from powerful mentors and coaches and spent long hours working on his hockey development plans. Mackenzie quickly excelled to play his first season in the WHL at 18 and was rewarded for his hard work and leadership through being drafted by the Vancouver Canucks that same year. Mackenzie learned how to develop his skills from NHL qualified coaches and players that allowed him to opportunity to develop at the highest level. He designed this course because of his belief is that if I can do it, anyone can. So the course he's talking about is an online program. He also offers some one-on-one skill stuff. One of my clients actually works with Mackenzie in his local area there. And I just want to talk about this. So I said to Mackenzie, if he wouldn't mind, that I would like to treat this a little bit like a podcast portion because it's so cool to read that. And it got me really curious. So born deaf, first of all, I mean, you're talking to me now. So explain that to us. That's such a crazy beginning.
Yeah, so this is one I get a lot, and I've had a lot of questions on it over my time playing hockey. But I was born deaf, and I had a ton of surgeries as a kid. So basically, I had some sort of serious asthma and fluid in my ear that I couldn't hear anything. So I had a bunch of surgeries to kind of reconstruct my palate, reconstruct certain pieces of my ear to get my hearing back. So now I have about 80% hearing. And ever since that, it was kind of a process before I could step on the ice again because there wasn't a lot of physical contact. So that was kind of the journey from the beginning there. Was just in the hospitals all the time as a youth.
That is insane. So like, when did the surgeries end? Like, when was your last surgery because of this?
I think I was about 7 or 8 years old when I had my last one. And then after that, it was speech therapy and a bunch of other things growing up. They actually wanted to put me into special needs school because I couldn't talk very well. And so I just had to work my ass off to get my speech better and be in the normal kids'
Right. Well, holy smokes, man! Like that's super inspiring. One, congratulations. You're a handsome, good-looking man. You talk completely normal, and you can hear what I'm saying. So I think everything must have worked out pretty good there, hey?
Yeah, no, it's been a journey, but it's something to look back on, and the adversity that you face early on can get you through other challenges in life.
No, 100%. I was going to touch on that. That's a great point. Like, you say that there that you weren't able to skate, but do you think that helped you in some way? Like once you were able to skate, once you'd been through?
I think that definitely fueled the passion and the work ethic that I was known for was, I had gone without it for a while. So it was so nice to just be able to have that, activity to do and be a part of an organization, be a part of a team. It puts things into a different perspective for you and you become more grateful for things.
100%. And I imagine, one of the things that I work with guys on a lot of the time is that the skill and the ability to persevere through other people's judgment and through, getting out of your own way and the ego of what people might think, especially when you're approaching a skill or a situation where maybe you didn't perform the way you wanted to. I would imagine, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like dealing with that type of judgment growing up and knowing that maybe you weren't talking quite right or couldn't quite hear properly, like you must have had to build some resiliency bones, I think, through that time, correct?
Big time. And I think that's something that, was kind of a gift or a blessing in disguise, just going through that adversity as a kid. And, I didn't get along with everybody in school. I got picked on, things like that. So it definitely fuel to fire. But I think, for me, it was more, I want to be better and I want to strive to be, better than the next. I'm not going to stoop to that level. And I think that really excelled in my hockey career because I didn't have an ego. I didn't have, this kind of, I don't know, ego, I guess, to think I was better than the next guy. It was more just, what can I do to get better, and being coachable. I think that's what really excelled me through the levels.
That's awesome. No, that is a gift. I mean, it's so crazy because I do talk about that. Actually, my mindset 101 that a lot of the listeners here have taken, and that's the idea that the experience and whatever that is, I mean, your experience being born deaf and having these surgeries and having people being picked on, like if we can frame that at the time, try and reframe that somehow, that we understand there is an opportunity there, that there is a blessing, that there is a solution, that it can be the best thing that potentially ever happened to you,
For sure. Big time. It's a lot to do with perspective, I think. And as I start to become a coach and step away from player, it's another learning experience where the ego comes up again, and you kind of have to learn to, why did I get that frustration? What's happening, and how can I improve?
Right.
As opposed to play a victim mentality, which happens all too often.
Yeah, that's really crazy. So 12 years old, so you get the skates back on. At that time, was it like, man, I just want to go skate, like I enjoy this sport, or was it like, this is the start of my hockey career? Like what was the approach at that time?
I think it's always been the same approach. Didn't matter what level I was on. It kind of had this. Maybe I wasn't confident in myself enough during my career, but I was just so grateful to play and so happy to be out there and perform. And I realized really quickly. I mean, even though I played one of the worst levels in Pee Wee hockey at the year, I was one of the best players on my team. And so that, I think, motivated me to get better. And as I started to work on my skills and kind of think about the game, not as a whole, but individually, of, I'm going to work on my hands, I'm going to work on my skating, I'm going to work on each piece of the puzzle that I thought would help me get to the next level. After watching friends who I thought were extremely talented at the time, I thought, oh, how can I do what he just did? And then I go practice it. And I would do it over and over again. And it was just so addicting to get better. And then all of a sudden skate with somebody who's better than you 3 months ago, to be closer to them and chasing. And it was just a constant chase to get to the next level. And I enjoyed every second of it.
That's wild, man. Like you're a poster boy for the growth mindset. Like,
Yeah,
that is what it is, though. I mean, that's that belief and that this insatiable appetite to improve, right? Like just to
big time.
have this process-driven mentality that I am going to get better, every
Big
day,
time.
and it's a choice. That's one of the things that I talk to everybody about, that this is a choice. This is something that can be modeled. Like, and if working with someone like you that lives this, like to see that in action is one thing, to be able to say it is another thing, to make sure that it's reinforced is another thing, because with that, man, we can get a lot better.
Big time.
And it's one of the things that I kind of feel bad about for myself, is because I was on that, maybe the other end of the spectrum from you potentially, right?
Yeah.
Like I was that really talented kid, and now I worked hard, but I didn't have that mentality of like, how do I get better every day? You know what I mean? Like I was
Yeah.
working hard, not necessarily in a skill development component, right? And I lost it even once I got to pro. And I think, man, if I would have understood what growth mindset was, and that, that there can be a belief about getting better daily that actually serves you and helps where you want to go in your goals, like, boy, that's a juggernaut right there.
Yeah, it's huge. And it's something that I think I was addicted to, and I was kind of a freak with it. If there was any little thing that I thought was going to give me an edge, I would do it. I remember I was in the WHL my first season, and we won't get too much into it, but this is just part of discipline and dedication of like how addicted I was to getting better. I used to bring a giant cooler on the bus. I would refuse to eat pregame meals because I was like, pasta and me don't get along. I'll put on weight, so I got to stay in fighting shape here. And I bring this giant cooler on the bus and like pack all my own food, cook all my own meals at 18 years old, and people were looking at me like I was freaking crazy. But all the NHL teams that I talked to that season, that's one of the things they brought up, and they're like, "Do you seriously bring a cooler?" And I was like, "Every single road trip, it's with me." And that's the kind of dedication it takes for anybody who's listening, or the hard work and the skills and all that will get you really far, but it's the discipline and the dedication to that growth mindset and being able to put into perspective of the opportunity that's right in front of you. Don't get too far caught ahead on, I want to play in the NHL. Obviously, that's a goal, but I think more people just need to focus on being the best at the level they're currently at, and then eventually you'll start to improve, and you can just keep building off of that.
That is awesome. I've been on that bus as you have been, and it's
Yeah,
like we've already touched on it, like being uncompromising about who you are and having that thick skin. And I talk about standards a lot too. And like, so you to embrace that standard, the Mackenzie standard, right? That this is what I am and this is who I am. And I am going to be different than you guys. And I don't give a rip, like what you think about that or what type of hard time you're going to give me is impressive, man. Like that's super cool. And that's why I can understand why scouts were impressed by that. Because all of a sudden now you're standing out.
Yeah, big time,
right?
man.
You're a guy willing to do stuff other guys aren't.
Yeah, 100%. I played full end of my career. I mean, you could look up and down the lineup. There was never really a night where you could point out next to a Leon Draisaitl who I played with where they're like, oh, wow, this guy's par for par with him. But in terms of work ethic and ability to learn and pick up skills as I went along, I think I was unmatched. And that's what earned me a contract. That's what earned me a spot in the NHL was that work ethic and knowing that if we bring this guy onto an organization, he's going to set a new standard even for guys who are even currently in the NHL. Even when I went to camp, it was the same thing. The guys are crediting me for that.
No, I mean, super impressive because you know what? Like the idea here is too, and I don't mean this condescendingly at all, but like if I look at your hockey DB, like your stats do not impress.
No,
you know
not at all. Yeah, not at all.
But that's the thing that's like beautiful and being honest about is because you can look at that stat line and be like, oh, okay, like what did he do? But like what you did, number one thing, first star was that you brought this character and this attitude and this approach to your game that got you to a level to be recognized, but then would also separate you from your peers in a different way that other guys weren't.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Guys want that in their organization and in their lineup. And I think that's like, it's such a powerful thing to see it like in the flesh, right? Because people don't really get that like it's not necessarily the best 725 players in the world that play in the NHL and get these contracts. You think talent all the time, right? But there's puzzles involved in this, and there's character, and there's pieces to the puzzle, and to have a guy in the minors or wherever that is that can be an example like you, can get you jobs and can get you contracts and get you paid and can continue your career and do what you love to do, right? So good on you, man. I absolutely love that. I'm going to go back a little bit because you mentioned the word grateful, that you were grateful to play. You were grateful to be around the rink. Do we have any advice for parents there? Because I see that. I use that as a coach a lot. I use it with my own kids a lot. I don't pretend to be an expert in it. My gratitude practice has improved on a personal level. I try to incorporate it daily. And it's really wise, in my opinion, for kids to practice it and to get them to be appreciative, because it's really easy to do in this privileged kind of day and age of in this hockey thing that we play, right? So how do you approach that with either your clients or even in your own personal gratitude practice?
So I'll give you kind of two perspectives, and I think perspective is anything. If you have a glass half full or half empty perspective, it's going to be how your life reflects in front of you. I'm a big believer in that. But if I said to you today, I'll give you $1 million today. You can do whatever you want with it. You're going to be happy as hell because you just had $1 million in your pocket. But I said, tomorrow, you're not going to wake up. If you take the $1 million today, tomorrow, you're not going to wake up. If you refuse it, tomorrow is another day you're going to wake up. Would you take that $1 million?
Me?
Yeah.
No, never.
Never, right? But we don't take into life that way. If I gave you $1 million, you'd be so happy, so excited to get up in the morning. But we just agreed that $1 million isn't worth as much as life. So if you have that perspective every single day when you wake up that I just got gifted more than $1 million, you should be that excited every single day. Especially for somebody who's playing the sport that they love. Like I would get up at 5 a.m. and be like, it's not early enough. I need to like keep going. Like I can't wait to get on the ice again. And you should have that attitude. And when we talk about energy or kind of how the universe treats us in terms of our reflection of ourselves and what we want out of life, if we're continuously to have this negative energy over us, or we look into the future too much and we're not grateful for what we have right now, as a parent, think about it like this. If you gave your kids a bunch of gifts, everything that they could imagine, new hockey sticks, skates, you spoiled them to death, and they just said, yeah, whatever, thanks. But, I want this thing that the neighbor has. And then all of a sudden you give a gift to the neighbor and it's the simplest thing ever. And he's like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, you feel so good about yourself. You want to give more back to that person. Well, the universe works in the same way. If you're not grateful for what it's given you in this moment, it's just going to think of you as a spoiled kid and give you nothing. So you have to be very grateful for what you have in front of you right now and work with what you have. Because if you have two legs and heartbeat, like, you have something to be grateful for right now. And there's just so much of that where we have an instant gratification of, I see it on TV, I want to be there, I want it now. I want to, be the star. And it's a process. Anybody who's lived it knows it's a process, and the best at it are extremely grateful and know what a blessing it is to be at that level.
Yeah, I think that's cool with the $1 million analogy, that every day is a gift. It's worth more than that. It's a cool perspective. I think that what you touched on there, I'd love to be able to bring that down from just a little bit to be like a little more practical, in the sense of like, how does that message get delivered to a 10, 13, 14-year-old kid, right, who just got benched by his coach, or thinks it's, I don't know what it is. I mean, they get pouty, and there's this attitude sometimes that maybe doesn't come through the way, they want, to act, even, or the way you'd like them to act. Is there, like, with that, it's just such a powerful thing. And I guess maybe, is there something more, like, what is the message? Because, like, we can say be grateful, right? But like, how do we be grateful? Like, what is there something that we can, like, is there a practice that you do to wake up with that type of smile and energy?
I literally have, I put a note out every single day. And it's like, congratulations, you just got another day. And I think that that's something that, if I'm looking at a kid who maybe has some attitude issue, or they're not getting what they want right now, and you start to get negative, and it's maybe not attitude as much as they lose belief in themselves. Understanding that we're accountable for everything that comes into our life. So that message that's being sent to you right now, you got benched, is a blessing, because if they don't give you that message and just tell you you're great and bench you anyways, what good is that to you? So the negative feedback that somebody is giving you, or what you're receiving from how you feel, is pushing you in the direction that you need to go. And when you get comfortable with being uncomfortable is when you're going to see growth. Nobody gets growth when they're comfortable. So when you have something negative happen, or something in that kind of situation, like, listen to it, listen to the feedback, and listen how do you react, and start asking yourself questions as to why you feel that way. If you feel disappointed, what did you do to let yourself down? Because it's not somebody else, it's your own problem. And that's really going to help you understand where you need to improve, one, as a player, and then two, as a person as well, where your frustrations are coming from, and how you can improve certain areas of your game. And I mean, you work with that all the time, with self-talk and confidence and those issues. Well, a lot of it comes from ourselves, and not listening to what's coming into our own life and taking accountability for it.
No, yeah. I mean, 100%. I think that's really powerful stuff. The gratitude is wild. Like, I think it's so wild. It's one of the, I mean, it's definitely getting more momentum, I guess, in mainstream. Like, people are talking about it more in high performance circles, and as a tool to, to be better and to change your standards. I think, like, that whole aspect of gratitude is actually a really interesting tool when you get into anxiety, even, like, not even depression, not even like being mopey, but like, one of the things sometimes for some of my players that I work with, like, that's their thing. Like, if you get into that environment, right, that you're anxious, you're nervous, you have performance anxiety, you just switch that on its head when you start being grateful for what's in front of you and the opportunity that you're in the dressing room, and to be thankful that you're got your skates on and you're in this moment. Like, when you can switch your thoughts to that, a lot of this goes away for people. Like, it's science behind it too, right?
Yeah, and I think it's just stepping outside of your own ego and understanding that kind of process of, everything around me is a gift, and really just breaking it down to that simple fact that if you're breathing and you have life, then you have something to be grateful for. And it's worth more than any money, any job, anything in the world.
Gotcha. I got Jocelyn. Thanks for saying hi. Welcome to the show. There's a few people have been commenting. One thing I don't like about Facebook or using StreamYard, guys, is that some people are recognized and some people aren't. So I'm not really familiar with that on your end, like what you see, I think StreamYard does say it's a quick little process. I think if you want to be recognized, so I can recognize who's on the call. Please do that next time you log in. So Jocelyn has done that, and so I know Jocelyn's here. Someone else is coming in without any identification, and I think gratitude is a mature concept and not easily instilled in someone else. It's something you learn every day as you age. This young man gets it. Cool. That means you. So that, yeah, I mean, true. But I do, I do think, because I'm such a growth mindset kind of guy now, I do think that the more that we model that and the more that we talk about it to our youngsters, I think that it's something that is sponged off us,
For
like
sure.
it's something that can be understood if they see it, and
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think in this world, in this day and age where everything's so quick and so fast, it's hard to just take your head out of everything that's going on and let the stress just, we're always thinking about what's next, but we don't take the moment to just appreciate what's in front of us. And something as simple as like the meal that's put in front of you, like if you want to instill that into somebody, understand how a meal gets there. Understand that somebody's working, to put a light in your roof or whatever it is, right? Like all these things have a process to work, and it's amazing when you think about it, but we don't take the time to just sit there and step out of our busy lives to kind of appreciate everything around us.
right.
um,
These I just wrote a note there while you were talking. You talked about like that process and the instant gratification, and for the parents out there, like now from a hockey angle, like I think this generation of kids, and if you're listening to this and if you're in this group, you have a kid that's either in junior or in minor hockey, they have grown up 100% in the technical age, right? They've
yeah.
grown up with the screen in front of them. They've grown up with Netflix and press the button, you get a movie. They've grown up with press the button online and it's going to be there the next day from Amazon. Like they've grown up with this, like they don't know anything different, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
the instant gratification is like at an all-time high. And so this element of waiting, of like under even standing what a process is like really foreign. And I think sports is a massive gift for that, and
Big
hockey,
time.
right? They need to
Big time.
understand it, because if you can embrace that now as an athlete, the stuff you're talking about, it's a massive game changer.
Big time. And I think there's two things to that statement is that patience, I don't think patience is the answer. I think things take time, but patience, you shouldn't have patience. If you're not happy with where you are right now, do double, do triple what you're doing right now. But understand that that work that you're putting in takes time. And to put that into perspective in my own career, when I was 15 years old, I got cut from um, midget AAA, and I was playing at a prep school, so I couldn't go back to the city at the time. So I went and played junior B hockey. And that year at 16, I got cut from 3 different teams in junior B hockey. But the entire time, I was still sticking to my process. I was still sticking to my power skating, still doing all my skills that I need to do, putting my best foot forward, even though it was a circumstance that wasn't in my favor. At 17 years old, I got an invite to a WHL camp. They didn't even have my name on the list. And I signed a contract with that team, with the PA Raiders at 17 years old, because I continued to do the work, even though it wasn't being put out in front of me, because I was still grateful for the opportunity. I was like, well, if I got cut from this team, well, at least this one's a little bit closer to home. I don't have to travel as far. Oh, I got cut from this one. Well, it's in the city now, and I still get to play. It's better than not having a team at all. And you have to really put that perspective in and understand that the work that you put in today is going to pay off tomorrow. But if you're not happy, don't sit and wait for things to happen. Do more and understand things take time.
Right. Exactly. That standard that I talked about earlier and that I talk about all the time, right? Develop your standard. What is that? And I like that. I mean, don't be patient, but be patient with the process, right? Don't be
Yeah,
patient with where you're at. Put in the work, but be patient with what it takes to get there, because if you outlast people, you're going to have an advantage,
big time.
and that's the thing. It's so hard for guys now, right? Okay, yeah, I want to get better at whatever my shot, and they'll shoot pucks for the first 5 days, but they don't shoot pucks for day 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? Like if you can find out to how where you can have the attrition in this, that's powerful, and that's like up here,
It's all
right? And
mental.
that's what it is.
Yeah,
It's
it's all
all
mental.
mental.
The biggest
It's
skill
all
that
mental.
anybody can have is discipline. Discipline will take you
Yeah,
the whole way, but it's the hardest thing to
yeah,
practice, and it's a skill that anybody can acquire.
yeah, yeah, man. Isn't that wild? Like that is so wild, and it's funny because within this group I talk about it, and there's some people that will will come to me, you know, and try and figure out what it means to work with someone like me, right? And we'll talk about kind of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because as a parent, like it's really it's like you go into a store, right? And you spend your money and you buy you know, a knee board for your boat. So you walk out with the knee board, you know what you got, right?
Yeah.
And so like with power skating or with skills, what you have, like that's a more tangible thing for people, right?
For
Like,
sure.
okay, I'm going to invest in power skating. I get to go watch the power skating lesson. I see that he's skating, he's on the ice. This makes sense to me, right? But then when we talk about, hey, you can learn dedication, you know, you can learn perseverance, you can learn how to control your anxiety with the right support and with the right repetition, that's like starts to get mushy. And even though it's like so powerful and it's so real and it is a skill, it's really hard for people to metabolize what that means.
A big time.
But I love to talk about it because it's like, I think it's the biggest thing going.
We know how I got into this kind of growth mindset or perspective. I mean, lots of it I think I did naturally. But I had a coach and he hated me and I hated him. We did not get along whatsoever. And he refused to play me in my first, no, it was my second year in the WHL, refused to play me. It didn't matter what I did, how hard I worked. We did not get on the same page. And one day he came up and he said to me, here you go. This is a book I want you to read. And I was like, whatever, like, I don't care, but I'm going to do it because that's who I am. And, you know, if somebody assigns me something, I want to do the best at it. And he gave me the book called The Secret. And The Secret is all about visualization, seeing yourself where you want to be, and then believing in yourself and understanding that the universe will pay you back. I read that book, I closed it, and I said, what a freaking crack job. Like, who gives me this book? Like, just put me on the ice. This is not going to help me whatsoever. But later, what I realized was such a powerful thing is that that's so true. And what that book misses out on is that you have to believe in yourself. You have to visualize yourself where you want to be, no matter what the outside looks like. And then you have to put it to action. You have to put it to action and stick to it and have the discipline to continue, because the universe, it pays to people who take action. You can't think your way into the NHL, but if you think differently with a good perspective and put it to action on all your skills and everything else, you will excel past everybody else. And I'm living proof of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you. And I know that book well, and they turned it into a movie. And I do also agree that that's the missing component, is like they don't talk about it. Almost seems you can sit in a couch with that movie, right? And just
exactly.
wish yourself to a millionaire. I mean, no, it doesn't work that way. But like, I mean, the idea of seeing yourself in that position, to see yourself actually living or executing that thing that you want to execute, that does help. That neurology
it changes
helps,
that perspective of, you know, the perspective of, you know, I wish I could be an NHL player, to how can I be an NHL player? And when you flip that around, now suddenly you start giving yourself tools to get there, and you start looking for answers, and you find guys like yourself and like me, who are willing to guide you in the steps that it takes to get there.
Yep. That's cool. And I saw on your website when I was going over it that your first testimonial, or at least the first one that showed up for me, was Ryan Johnson.
Yeah.
And Ryan Johnson was my first pro roommate, just FYI.
Oh, really?
So like,
that's hilarious.
Yeah, really connection. So we were, he was drafted 5 spots after me, I think, by Florida in the same draft year in '94. So we entered the Florida Panther organization together. He was from Thunder Bay. We had a camp there once with Florida, and just got along great with him. And we both started our first pro year in the minors, and started rooming together. So I know RJ real well. Awesome guy. I assume that was from your time in Utica where you got to know him, or
actually, so when I first went into Vancouver, he was head of player development. So me and him built a relationship right away. I still talk to RJ actually, and I'd come down to Vancouver's camp and help with the prospect and things like that. But then he went from player development to GM at Utica the year after, I think, right? And then Smeal took over for player development there. So yeah, no, I have a great relationship with Vancouver still, and he's awesome. I love him. He's a real deal.
Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Real good guy. All right. Well, let's get into more about what you do, I guess. And I think that's and we'll cover the skills side. I think I know you do mentorship well, and you get into nutrition, and there's lots of places that you touch on. But I think for what we're at, and what I think is applicable to my group here is, hey, we're in a time where not a lot of people are even on the ice, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people still don't have access to ice. So I'd like to cover it kind of from that aspect, the skill development aspect, and what guys can be doing now. And in the big picture, though, maybe before we get there, is the game's so fast now, right? And
Yeah.
everyone seems to be so skilled, and everyone talks about how this game has kind of changed and evolved. Like, do you feel with your own approach and your own philosophy, like what is the biggest component of a hockey player in today's day and age?
I actually had a good conversation with RJ about this. And he's, obviously in the NHL level, they see it even with their top prospects. It's skating. Skating is number one skill that's going to take you to the next level. If you can't skate, you're going to fall off big time. And that's something where in my own game, I wasn't a strong skater until I started to work on it. And I had worked on it for years. Every other day I was doing different kind of power skating. And improving your edges, improving your foot speed, improving your ability to have a lengthened stride. And I mean, we can really get into that, but I see guys come into Vancouver's camp as prospects who are they kill it in the fitness testing, but they can't skate because they haven't been taught the fundamentals of a stride, how to properly transfer your load from blade to blade, and it's such a unique skill. And when you get really, really good at it, you can see guys like, for example, who's maybe not in the best physical shape, Phil Kessel, but he's one of the most fluent skaters in the NHL simply because his stride pattern is just so perfect. Being able to transfer load like that and being able to excel and change direction, I think, is more important in these days. Straight line skating isn't enough anymore. You really have to be able to have that quick lateral movement from side to side. So skating by far is going to be what takes you the length.
I agree. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I mean, I say that to my Adam guys at practice. I mean, that's one of my monikers is I'm like, you can't skate, you can't play.
Yeah.
It's almost that simple. Like gone are the days of the guy being able to sit in the slot with a big one timer and score the goals. Like, you got to be able to get to the slot, and you got to be able to be interactive on the forecheck and be able to get back in your own end. It's becoming such a 200-foot game that you got to be able to get around. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you from a skill side. I think skating's the thing, and if you are really passionate about hockey and you want hockey to be your thing, you can get by without the best hands. You can get by without maybe a shot, right? You can find any lineup if you're an amazing skater. So I agree with that. Well, one question I have is, this is just me from an outside looking in. Most of the attention I find people are focusing on now is the edge work, like all the fancy edge work drills. Yeah. I'm victim of it a little bit too. I won't get into maybe all the different practices, but I think the powers, like the actual stride, like the composition of the stride and the fundamentals of the stride, and like you mentioned, be able to elongate your stride, like that straight line scenario doesn't get touched on very much anymore, I don't think. Like, do you see that yourself?
So what I've been mentored on and through my power skating is a lot about the neurological connection between our feet, hips, shoulders, and our head. We want to be in that straight kind of line. And the edge work, working on one foot, is amazing. It's amazing stuff. Like, it shouldn't be skipped whatsoever. I think once you get comfortable on your edges, you're going to become a more dynamic, you're going to become a more fluent skater through your stride. Where I see a big kind of failure in stride is that, and this is controversial to some, and I can explain kind of the science behind it, but we like to push instead of step, if that makes sense. So when we have our feet together, we want to push this foot out instead of step and transfer my load. And when you step to transfer a load, imagine your leg. How much can you push with one leg? Even if you're the strongest athlete in the world, let's say it's like 300 pounds. Well, if I can step, I'm transferring all my weight onto that next stride, and I'm extending all my body weight plus the force that it takes to move that. You're going to have a longer stride, more efficient stride, just from changing away from a push. You're not going to wear out as fast. And we break that down. And a lot of it comes to edge work, because even just think about naturally walking, we're never really on 2 feet when we're walking. We're always on 1 foot. So same thing with skating. When you're in that long stride, you're really skating on 1 foot essentially until you make your next step, and that release point happens and you step back in. So if you're not comfortable on your edges, you're going to struggle with your stride.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. I like the way that you break it down there. One of the things that I talk about with the guys that I work with is just that, is being able to get your weight onto that leg. Now, an issue I find, I'm not sure if you find the same thing, is that a lot of times the leg strength isn't there to carry that load. Yeah. So they're actually trying to get the weight off the leg which then gets into balance issues, which then gets into all these other things, right? And a shorter stride and less power because they don't want to be here they want to be here. I mean, you think about it when you're doing a squat, right? The position of your squat matters. You can have your body weight over top of your legs and loading it, or you can be forward, and you're not getting that load. So do you think that's a correlation, like as far as that form or even just leg strength in general is maybe a precursor for some of these issues?
Yeah. So I think for hockey players, there's kind of three key points that we struggle with. And if you think about the average squat, we're really bent forward at our hips, and then we're kind of straight with our legs, if that makes sense. And that's because of ankle mobility. So as hockey players, we struggle a lot with ankle mobility because we're in these boots that are just wrapped around, our ankles. We most skaters want to have that tight feeling of the laces, and they think that's comfortable because it feels secured. The ankle is what drives the knee forward. That's what allows you to get to the proper depth that it takes to get into a stride. So if you have stiff ankles, which I would say 99.99% of hockey players will, work on your ankle mobility. You're going to get more depth. Undo the top lace on your skate. You're going to get a deeper squat. You're going to allow for a stronger push. You're going to be in a more powerful position simply by just getting a little bit more ankle mobility in your skates. The next from there, obviously, is just comes down to coordination, and a lot of it is core strength too. A weak core is going to make you topple forward, and on skates, as we know, the more you topple forward, the more you're going to butt kick, the more legs are going to fly out. You're not going to be in a very efficient stride pattern. You want to be more in that kind of upper right position when it comes to skating, because you're going to allow better leverage, like you would in an ideal squat, if that makes sense. So working on your squat off ice and your hip mobility, your ankle mobility, and getting great core strength is going to completely correlate into your stride pattern, because the more forward you are, the least effective your stride is going to be. You wouldn't squat with a barbell on your back with the barbell pushing over top of your knees. You need those knees to come forward, if that makes sense.
Yep. No, it does. It does. Yeah, that's the ankle mobility I agree with. Like in the sense, although it's funny because like I was a guy that would wrap my ankles, right? So like from a motor kind of aspect, like to me it makes sense. Like that's a whole other muscle group, meaning like your calf and like that flexion when you kick your toe at the end of your stride, like all that is a power source, right? That maybe I was underutilizing. Paul Coffey also like wrapped his ankles though, like one of the best skaters ever, right? So like it's kind of strange though, right? And I know there's not one blanket theory, but like a lot of kids on my team were taking the top eyelid out of their skates. I had my son try that this year too to see what he thought of it. To me, that functionally makes sense. At some point though, I wonder, like it's not like a shoe, and I think it's not like a shoe for a reason, because I think with the elevated size of, I mean, you're over top of that blade, right? So there's an angle difference there where your ankle's not meant to really withstand all that type of pressure either. So I think that there is a happy medium there for some.
There is big time a happy medium. And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is the amount of blade that's on the ice. With more blade on the ice, the stronger your push is going to be. You have more force and more traction. And the more friction you can reduce within your stride, the faster you're going to be. It only makes sense. The more friction you have on a surface, it's going to slow itself down. So the less friction you have in your stride, which usually means the less noise you make on your edge work, the more efficient you're going to be with your stride. The more blade you can have on that ice, the better of a push you're going to have off of that leg as well.
Gotcha. So when we talk about skills and we talk about getting better, like what is your approach to that, to improvement? And by the way, for anyone who's new here, again, I can't see who's watching or who isn't. Remember, this is definitely meant to be interactive with Mackenzie. If you have something that applies to your son, or if you're a coach out there and want to ask some questions, please do. I don't mean to monopolize the conversation. Definitely give the thumbs up if you like what you're hearing. Add some comments. It makes it more fun for us, and we want to keep it engaging. But yeah, so back to what I was talking about there. Like somebody comes to you, let's say, says, hey, I want to do some work. Like what's the first steps of figuring out what it is you're supposed to do?
I think the simple mechanics of it is building from the ground up. So for example, if you're going to be shooting pucks off ice, first work on just mastering the snapshot. Very simple, standing still on a piece of whatever glass off the ice or whatever it is. And just work on hitting your corners. Be consistent with that. Learn what it feels like to do that consistently before you start to skip a step. I find lots of the times that we skip over the basics just to jump into the advanced stuff. Like we all want to learn how to shoot like Austin Matthews with that big toe drag shot, but we skip the step of the snapshot first. So once you get through the basics, then start to build more dynamic training zones for yourself. And what I mean by that is, so for example, a Pee Wee hockey player, I might say, okay, we're just going to focus on the basis of being able to get that good flexion in your stick, letting the stick work for you in a snapshot scenario, maybe work on a couple different angles, get you comfortable with raising the puck, then start picking corners. And then from there, let's say a junior level player, like they could do that all day. Now I want to work on something a little more dynamic. I want you to take a toe drag, step and pull, shoot, and I want you to hit the top left corner every single time. Getting more dynamic with your shooting, specifically even your stick handling now, because the game is so quick and defenders are so amazing. Like it's not very often do you see a guy come down the wing with a snapshot and fool a goalie. It just doesn't happen. There's always something dynamic movement happening or some uncomfortable position that they put themselves in. For example, on an Austin Matthews shot, if you really break it down and watch it, like he's taking that release from almost in between his legs. It looks unnatural when you slow it down with just how big of a toe drag that is towards himself. Those are the little skills that are going to make those shots happen and turn into goals. Because again, you can't just take a shot and expect it to go into the net anymore. Lots of those shots from far out or those scoring chances have to be more dynamic, or they have to be a really quick release. You have to be working on one of the two.
Right. Yeah, fundamentals are important. A couple of things came to mind there as you were talking, and one of them is that generally we have, when it comes to shooting now, generally players have a sweet spot.
Big time.
And there's a way that they like to shoot the puck, and that way becomes a hindrance, in my opinion. Because
100%.
Yeah, they need to find that way to get that puck into that position to be able to release that puck. And what I like about Matthews, and you mentioned Matthews, is that yes, he's a righty, and yes, he loves to pull it in, right, and then shoot it, but he can also go out
with it. Absolutely.
Much force, right?
Yeah.
And that's crazy. So like, I guess for the listeners here, and maybe some of the kids that might watch this in their houses, like I talked to my boy about that. Is like, you know what, like have that, like when they break down their practice, I suggest like, hey, have some type of scenario that you're going to get uncomfortable with too.
Yeah, exactly. You have to get uncomfortable.
Right. And that uncomfortable means, you know what, it might be a duck. You might not even get it off the ice. I mean, you might, like, who knows what that thing is and how awkward that feels and how gross that feels and how bad you're going to tell yourself you are at it. But like that, like you said that earlier, that's where the growth comes, right? With that uncomfortability.
100%.
You have to find that thing so you can have a wider net, right?
You have to have a 180 radius in all your game. And I think that's what NHL guys are doing so well these days, is that they are training out of their comfort zones. They are taking things more dynamic. I mean, if you have a comfort zone in your shot, that's for sure going to be your tell. The minute that you set up in that position and the goalie sees you shoot more than once, they're going to know exactly what's happening when you go into that position again. The more dynamic you can be in a 180 radius around your body, the harder it is for a goalie to make a reaction onto your shot. And you just have to be able to practice those positions and make it as game-like as possible. Like, make it as relevant to something like I'm pulling around a defender and taking a shot. I'm going to pull around a defender and take a shot off my strong leg. I'm going to pull around a defender, take a shot off my weak leg. And I'm going to get comfortable with both. And once you get comfortable with shooting, now it's not just good enough to shoot it. You have to pick a corner with it and be consistent. You have to really drill it into you and know what that feels like, so that when it comes game time, how often in the NHL did you get a shot right down the freaking middle and no traffic, nobody's in front of you, like once a season? You know what I mean? It never happens. So it's more those shots that you had where, if I just got a little bit in this awkward position, but I didn't have time to set it up, and that's why I missed a net. Well, that's the difference between a 20-goal scorer and a 30-goal scorer, or 30-goal scorer and a 40-goal scorer. Is because they're able to get that release in those uncomfortable positions, and it's not fluke. They practice.
No, 100%. And I'll even break that down. I mean, I know you didn't do it intentionally, but like 5 goals makes $1 million difference in the NHL.
Unbelievable.
And it makes a round or two difference in the draft. Like, those things do matter, right? Like those,
a 29 and a 30 is a big pay difference.
Yeah, makes a big difference. And just for the parents there too, right? And this is the idea. And like I said, sometimes the athletes watch these things. I can relate from the perspective of like, and there's going to be kids that are watching this that are good right now, and their shots better than the goalies, right? You can
Yeah.
overpower people, especially at the minor hockey level, right? Some guys mature quicker, some guys are stronger. Not
Oh
they have
yeah.
just. I mean, nobody can stop it because they're just not good enough. But at some point, that equals out, right? That
Oh,
some
100%.
those goalies are good enough. And when you get stuck with that one trick pony, as you said, and your tell matters. And I'll tell one story which is funny. I don't think I've shared it here, but when I was with Toronto, the great Curtis Joseph was there, right? So I'm playing for the Leafs. Curtis Joseph is there, and this guy he worked like a dog. Loved his nickname because he was a dog out there, and he on his off games wanted to stay out after, and I always loved staying out after too. So a lot of times when he wasn't in the pipes and Healy would start, it would be me and Curtis Joseph at the end of practice. We're the only ones on the ice, and he would have me, and not to pump my own tires, but we're talking about a guy who scored 47 goals in the minors in one season, right? Like, it wasn't like I didn't score. And he would tell me to put 5 pucks on the hash marks, center hash marks. He'd stand on the goal line, and I had to score 3 to win. And there was lots of times I wouldn't score any, because he knew, right? Like, he knew I could not, like, my uncomfortable position for a relief wasn't good enough to beat him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he knew where my strong shot was and my release, and he could tell where it was going, and it drove me nuts.
Crazy. I hate that.
Absolutely nuts. But yeah, I mean, guys get that good. You know what I mean? And some goalies don't pick up your release. I mean, there are guys that you're going to have, but there's sometimes when they see it, and if you can't change it, you don't score on.
You're not going to win. And at the end of the day, if your goal is to make it to the highest level, the goalies at the highest level, they're going to know your tells, and they're going to be able to see that right away. You take those 2 strides, step, and that big kind of, what looks like a disguised shot, it's not disguised. They know what's happening.
Yeah, I agree. No, that's great. And I guess, I mean, the message here is like, make the practice matter. I mean, guys, like, I hear it's famous, I'm going to shoot 200 pucks today. Well, I mean, awesome. You're probably doing more than the next guy. So I think that's great. But like, how are you shooting those 200 pucks?
Yeah.
Right. Like, is your mind in it? Like, are you actually focusing on what you're doing? What are you trying to improve while you're doing that? Or is it just like monotonous repetition? And sometimes that actually is worse for you because you're ingraining some terrible habits potentially.
Getting bad habits. Exactly. I think one of the things I try and focus on a lot with my players is getting that mental aspect as well when it comes into your training, that there has to be an intention. There's an intention to this practice. There's a purpose behind it. And if you can't, like, the most exhausting thing about practice is not the physical side, it's the mental side, and having that focus and that discipline to stay within what you're trying to practice. It's easy to get distracted. It's easy to shoot 200 pucks, and by puck 50, you're like, hey, watch this, I'm going to sauce it on top of the net, right? Like, you have to have a structure without your practice of, this is a skill I'm intended on improving today or this month or this week, and I'm going to do it until I have it mastered and I can hit that spot time and time and time again. And it takes time, and it's practice, and it's intentional, and it's focus, and it's a lot of mental focus to visualize this scenario in your head of, I love to use the toe drag shot because I think it's so versatile in this game, is that I'm pulling this in around a defender. Well, where's this defender going to be? What's realistic on the ice? What do I see most in this circumstance? Maybe your pull in isn't as long as the next guy's. You have to really kind of calculate what you're practicing. Otherwise, you're just, again, you might be picking up bad habits, or it might not be game-like. And if you can't do it in a game, then congratulations, you're a practice hero, but that doesn't get you the ice time and the minutes that you want.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I just love talking about this stuff because it's super real, and it's great to have a conversation with you about it because, a lot of times parents haven't been involved. They don't really get it. And this is something that they're athletes that take the game seriously, right?
Seriously.
Like, you take the game seriously, and it can be important to you, but if you don't know what you don't know, nothing changes, right? Like, you think you're doing the right thing, but you're actually not doing the right thing. So you need, like, that conversation matters. And when kids 13, 14, 15, 16 that I work with, I'm like, no, like, this is how you can break down what you're doing. This is how I want you to focus. And I want you to dedicate a time capsule in your program where you're going to for sure work. And what you're actually working on is not only your shot, but you're working on your focus.
Your focus.
You're being able to control your mindset. Even when you don't want to shoot that puck again, you know that time isn't up, right? And that's part of the practice. And then, of course, incorporate 50 minutes of fun and screw around, because that's what it's supposed to be. But when they actually acknowledge the skill development outside of the skill, like the shot, right? Outside this, I'm working on my shot. When they realize that shot is now also has to do with my preparation and my focus and my intention and my
Yep.
deliberateness, like that's a whole different level of practice.
Yeah, it's what takes the average and turns them into elite is having like the first step to any training session is preparation. You cannot go and train without prep. And that doesn't mean I'm going to warm up. It's literally I'm mentally thinking about what do I want to accomplish today and how am I going to plan out this? And that is the first step. Put yourself in a space where you can improve. If you don't do that, then you're just blindlessly shooting pucks, like you said, and or doing whatever skill it might be. There has to be intention. And it has to be for players like I can't preach enough. Like you need to get uncomfortable. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. If you know that you have an amazing, snapshot, okay, then work on your backhand. Work on a different type of snapshot. Like get yourself to where there's a point where there isn't a place the puck can be. And like you hear the term, you can never give a good player a bad pass. Well, you should not have a bad shot in any place around your stick.
Yeah, no, for sure. That there's a comment here that they watch Cale I'm sorry, I can't say who it is because it's an anonymous user because of the StreamYard, but it says I watched Cale Makar in a lot of skills sessions in junior, and he spent hours on all the tricks, and it's paid off in Colorado. Yeah, I mean for sure. And again, we don't want to say that you do this and you're going to be Cale Makar, but it's amazing how frequently those names or those guys that make it actually are the ones that do the stuff we're talking about. Like the correlation is high. The correlation.
It's there, and I think there isn't I think it'd be naive to think that even the guys who are in the minors in the NHL, if you're in professional hockey, you're doing those things. You are.
Yeah.
There's no way to get there without intentionally thinking about it. Things don't just accidentally happen to you, and all of a sudden you wake up and you're in the NHL. Everything is intention with those guys.
Yeah. One of the things, so we have, like I mentioned earlier, parents of all different age hockey players here, and what we're talking about, like on I'd say this is like the junior level, Bantam level, like maybe Bantam level, they're starting to get drafted attention. Serious Bantam players can have this type of intention, but they can definitely like graduated scale, right? I mean, like for my 7 or 8 year old, I mean, I would be like, you can have that. Hey, what are you going to work on? Like that could be the extent of like what their preparation is, what I mean? But just to get that locked in that, it's not just blind. It's not just loss going out there, right? So there's a graduated, I guess, way to talk about this depending on the athlete that you're dealing with.
For sure.
You don't want an 8-year-old having a, detailed practice plan and like the way they have to be. And, I mean, like that's fine, but that's not my expectation at least, right? I think that there's an expectation that is age appropriate within this, that is teaching those skills to help them out in the future.
For sure. And I think, in terms of just talking about visualization or talking about intention and that mental side of things, if they're younger than 14, like you need them to enjoy the game. So maybe that preparation or that intention is how much fun are you going to have today? And let's make this as fun as possible. Get you to enjoy it, because too often do we drill in, this regiment that just is never going to stick in the long run. I've seen kids get themselves out of the game that were extremely talented because mom and dad said they had to do this and they didn't want to do that. There comes a certain age where I'd say around 14, 15, it's like either you're taking it seriously or you're playing hockey. Do you want to be a hockey player or do you want to play hockey? And it comes around that 14, 15 age where the motivation is enough now. They can see kind of a future with the WHL. They can see junior hockey in their kind of sights, and they start to realize that this has to become a little more serious than just having fun. And if you want to just have fun, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. You can have fun, improve your skills, and play high level hockey, and have a great time at it. But if you want to be that much more serious and want to really strive to be excellent, you're going to have to start practicing those things that we're talking about, and that's when it becomes a little bit more, real around your intention and your mental practices.
It's professional, right? I think the earlier you look to be a professional, like the better. And again, I echo what you're saying there. It's not my dream; it's their dream, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
You want to be wherever that is. There's going to be a way to get to that, and that's what I try and be real about with whoever I'm working with. Is like, okay, I love the goal, I love the intention, I love the big dream. This is like, let's work together on how we think that looks, right? Like how does that step look? Like how does that process look? And now it's up to you whether you want to follow through on that, right? And if that's not for you, then that's fine. And I would suggest changing your dream and just, like you said, play hockey. Don't be a hockey player,
Exactly.
No, that's a really cool way of putting it. I think, well, we're almost done here. one thing I would, when we were talking about shooting, and it's just from my own curiosity, I find that one of the biggest breakdowns from a skill standpoint, at least from like well, actually, I think all the way up, is passing. I don't think
Yeah.
people know how to pass anymore. And
No.
and it's crazy. And one of the things, and this is just me being observing and then actually trying to get guys to figure out how to do it, is, well, one, all the skill stuff with the puck and their heads down all the time. You know,
Yeah.
what they're working on is usually head down stuff. So it's hard to even see that the pass is there. And two, that ability to move a puck firm along the ice
Yeah.
is lost because everyone's trying to go top shelf all the time.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's phenomenal. Like, especially at that young age, from like 10, 11, 12, get a 10 or 11, 12-year-old kid to try and pass the puck hard along the ice. It's comical to watch.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Even at the pro level, there's guys who still don't know how to pass. And I think it's a skill that, they say North Americans were just not good at passing. The game has changed so much in the way that, I never played, but they had two-line passing where you had no choice but to pass. And that got eliminated. And now we can get away with chipping it off the boards and rimming the puck. And everything doesn't have to be as crisp because it's just move it forward and chase and chase and chase.
Yeah.
But that passing skill is something that, even just something as simple as a backhand pass, it's forgotten about, even at the pro level. There's not a lot of guys. And I played with Leon Draisaitl. I was definitely say one of the best passers that I ever played with. And just studying him, and he would practice that. That's something that he practiced all the time. His short pass, his long pass, and there was not very often he would miss a pass. And there's a skill set to that as well.
Oh, 100%. And I guess for just people listening, and that's what's hard because it's not sexy and it's kind of not fun, but it's to practice shooting low hard. Like, no one
Yeah,
likes shooting bottom corners. Like that 2 foot off the ice, 1 foot off the ice, like that practice. I try and talk to my guys a lot about practicing that because that correlates to a cross-ice pass, right? A firm
yeah,
cross pass. It correlates to other things. And also you score some goals with that shot, right? But if the only thing you
big
can do
time.
is go far, I mean, it's hard. Anyways, I promised you an hour, so here's an hour. I think I really enjoyed it. It's amazing how quick 60 minutes goes. Awesome hearing your story. Awesome hearing about you. I love what you stand for and what you're all about. And I think there's a lot of good stuff here for all the parents that are going to watch this here and are going to watch this after. So Mackenzie, thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's awesome to come out and educate, and I'd love to come back on the podcast or whatever this is again.
Yeah, no, it turned out to be a little bit of a podcast, but yeah, for everyone here listening too. So remember, it's Allegiance Hockey. It was Mackenzie's company. There's some online programs there if you want to find out more about what Mackenzie does and what he has to offer. But he's also going to be in the group. We spoke earlier, and Mackenzie's going to offer some of his drills that he thinks would be great for us. So my Skill Sundays are going to be Mackenzie's for the next couple of weeks. He's going to offer some of his own videos. So that's awesome. We really appreciate doing that, Mackenzie. And just a reminder to everyone out there, right, that this group is pretty special. I think what we're doing here is really special. What you guys get every week is pretty special, and the type of quality people we're getting on here to try and make your hockey journey better is special. So in saying that, please tell people about it, and please ask them to join, and please get the word out there. I love seeing the numbers grow. I love when I see you guys recommend it. It tells me that we're doing something right here. So thank you so much for doing that and all the support we've had so far. So again, Mackenzie, thank you so much. And for you guys out there, you're going to see more of them, and can't wait to work with you more. And thanks for sharing today.
Yeah, no, I look forward to it, and look forward to building a relationship with people in the group and get the skills going.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Sweet.